Now that we've overviewed the assignment in general, I want to move through bit by bit what the rubric is all about. Once again, this is just a way of providing us with a common set of definitions. Also, it will structure our time for the next couple of weeks. So, as it has been in the past, I'm looking in terms of invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. So, under invention, in the past I've broken this into two categories. Here it's just one, and we've broken delivery into two categories. So, under invention, we're looking for, does the speaker discuss the ill and blame and consequences, if applicable, effectively and appropriately? As we'll see at the end of this week, these are part of the stock issues, and I think these are exceptionally useful to you in advocating your case. So, are you discussing ill, effectively and appropriately? Did you discuss the cure effectively and appropriately? Ill is problem and cure is solution. So, did you discuss both sides of the coin effectively and appropriately, and then call to action? Do you have these recommendations? Do you end with something that we as audience members can do? Beyond that, do you have congruent argument elements, meaning they all fit together? So it's almost a call and response. You've identified a problem, then you've solved for that problem in the same speech. So you're thinking through how these argument bits fit together. And then, of course, you're using evidence effectively and appropriately, where you need it in order to make that case a compelling one. In terms of arrangement, I would say my concerns are less with overt arrangement in this speech. Certainly in the impromptu, it was almost primarily about the arrangement, right? It was being able to have that two-point speech. In the informative speech, in order to be clear, the goal was clarity. And so arrangement played a pretty important role. You wanted to walk us through how you had organized that information because that was part of helping us understand that information. In the persuasive speech, the goal is to make your case and motivate us to action. So in that sense, arrangement needs to be oriented towards that motivational end. Maybe that has you saying, I've got 3 issues I want to talk about. Maybe not. So I'm more concerned with the effect of the arrangement than with the overt nature of the arrangement. So under arrangement, we would say the speaker oriented the audience to the topic in the introduction appropriately and effectively, however you do that, so long as it's the right fit for that topic. Arrange the speech in a clear and compelling manner. So I don't mean that your speech should be confusing, right? Just because we're getting rid of signpost words doesn't mean all of a sudden, we're getting rid of any concern with arrangement. But arrangement here means how you're structuring the speech for a specific end. If the goal is to motivate us to action, arrange the speech in that way, right? So you've organized the speech in a way that works for your goal, for that motivational end point. And then, of course, you conclude the speech in an effective and appropriate way. So we're thinking more broadly in terms of arrangement rather than nuts and bolts of arrangement. How is arrangement helping you achieve your goal in that speech? Then we get into style, and style's really where we're moving away from what we've done previously in a good way. So the impromptu speech was very plain-spoken style, right? It was stuff that you quickly pulled together. It's very conversational. In terms of preparation and note card use, pretty minimal outline. Informative speech, well, you had to make some very specific language choices. You wanted to avoid jargon, you wanted to define certain terms, and you wanted to use analogies and examples and illustrations as a way of achieving your end in that speech, clarity. Now we get into the persuasive speech, this advocacy speech. And so here we're dealing much more in that high form of oratory. Certainly when people think about speeches that they love and remember, they have this stylistic attention to them, this richness, this motivational capacity. And now we're getting into that. So does the speaker in the speech use stylistic and strategic language appropriately and effectively? Does the speaker demonstrate a persuasive ethos, which is similar to but different in some ways from the informative ethos you had in the last speech? Then I went ahead and I broke delivery and memory into 2 categories here. And I had a trouble sort of naming them. I have something after a colon on each one of these. So I was trying to think, well, what's going on here? And as I stepped back, I kind of thought, well, what I'm talking about in this first delivery component are really kind of advanced delivery issues. I don't want to minimize the importance of those basic delivery elements, but I do want to suggest that now at the end of this course, we've done a lot with delivery, and now we can start getting our hands deeper and deeper into what's really making a speech engaging, compelling, what's making speakers stand out as having gravitas, as arete in their speaking encounters. So we get into this first category of delivery, which I would say delivery is sort of advanced categories. So in style, you've got these stylistic and strategic language devices in your speech. You've written them in well. That's in and of itself insufficient. You have to be able to deliver that stylistic device in a way that sounds good. So I say it, you've captured the rhythm of the stylistic devices used. Because something that's well written but flatly delivered misses out on the unique opportunities of spoken language. And so really being able to think about the other side of this. Remember in the delivery exercises for the informative speeches, I was having you read some poetry. I was having you read some famous speeches. Here's where we're trying to do more of that. We're trying to get at the delivery devices used. Also, another sort of advanced delivery category included a variety of effective and appropriate levels and tones. By this I mean there's different feelings and movements in the speech itself. So if you're talking about an issue that you want to solve, if there's a problem and there's a solution, you shouldn't sound angry on both sides, right? You can be angry at the problem, maybe explanatory, it sounds explanatory, feels explanatory in the cause, and then on the solution and the call to action, you should probably be more motivational. If you're angry throughout the whole thing, that's a pretty flat speech, okay? You may not be monotone, but you're emotionally mono-emotional. I don't know if that's a thing. But we want to be able to see that there's movement and change and a feeling of difference throughout the speech, okay? So this is another one of these sort of advanced delivery issues. And then finally, under this advanced delivery stuff, we're carrying something over for the informative, which is you're helping us distinguish between key ideas and elaborating detail. So you're still going to have evidence in this speech. Once again, we want to make sure that that evidence stays in its appropriate place, driving those claims, driving those key ideas. Then we return to that delivery category that's a bit more basic, which we've seen a lot in the past. Okay, this has held true largely from the impromptu speech to now. Are you using projection and notes appropriately and effectively? Are you using vocal variety and movement and gestures appropriately and effectively? That hadn't changed. But now we're taking those core ideas and we're adding in these other aspects of style and delivery and emotional tones and movement throughout the entire speech. So that's the rubric for this assignment, the feedback form for this assignment. And as always, you should think about this form as a way of organizing your thoughts on this speech, as a way of organizing your thoughts on the very issue of persuasive speaking. It certainly is going to structure our time. We're going to take up stock issues at the end of this week and then move through the various other elements of that rubric. But in using these rubrics, what I want you to be able to do is increase your critical acumen as a listener, both in general, when you're doing stuff outside of this class, and most certainly if you choose to upload a speech and go through the peer review system. I want to make sure that you're providing quality speech feedback. It makes you better as a speaker, and it helps others as well. So with that, we'll end our discussion of the rubric, and in the next lecture, we'll take a look at a sample speech and examine it through the rubric.